Hi world, it's Keely and I am back for another video. This is going to be the start of another weekly vlog. I'm so sorry, give me 1 second. I don't understand why my camera, I think because the heat just kicked on, my camera's shaking. I have a bunch of schoolwork to get done this week. I have some reading updates for you. I have a tiny book haul and I figured we could just get started. It is Monday and the books that I am currently reading are Dating and Dismemberment by A.L. Brody, which is a monster rom-com, and then also Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson. I have not read any more of this since I picked it up last week. I've been reading other things, and let me actually open my story graph so I can tell you what I've read, because I did finish a book that's over there. Okay, I did actually get some reading done over the weekend. I finished What Was Shakespeare Really Like by Stanley Wells. I only had one essay left and then just the epilogue, and I did really enjoy this one. I was getting kind of tired of it by the end of it and just wanted to move on to the next thing because he was talking a lot. The final essay was about what makes Shakespeare laugh. He was just referencing so many of Shakespeare's plays and sonnets and stuff that I haven't read, so it was just so much of like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So I was getting a little bit tired of this one, but I did finish it. And then I read in its entirety this past weekend Dating and Dragons by Christy Boyce, which is the second book in this series that she's doing. The first one was Dungeons and Drama. These are just like super fun Dungeons and Dragons kind of related romances. And this one, it's not the same characters as the first one, but in this one you're following Quinn, who is starting at a new high school. Her family has relocated to a town where her grandmother lives because her grandmother is getting older and having some health issues. She's fallen a couple times, and so they just wanted to be closer to her. And you also learn that Quinn played Dungeons and Dragons with her friend group at her old school, but there was some kind of falling out with them, and that also potentially led to them making the decision to move to a new school. And then you're just following her as she tries to make friends at the new school and kind of recover from the mental health effects of what happened at her old school, while also working with her family to help her grandmother. And this one was lovely. I really enjoyed this one. These ones are just so much fun, so I would definitely recommend these books. Obviously talking a lot about Dungeons and Dragons, and I've played for like 5 or 6 years at this point with my friend group, so it's always fun to read those kind of books. And then I read a Susanna Clark that was on my list of books to read. This one is her shortest one. It's only 60 pages. It was The Wood at Midwinter, which is a tiny folk tale about, it's like Meredith, but Meredith, who talks to animals, and she goes out into the woods and encounters a blackbird and a fox, and so they talk, and it's just very sweet. I really enjoyed that one, so I did mark that one off on my list of authors to read. I have, if you watched my last video, I went through a group of authors that I would like to read and then how many of their books I've read and what I have left, and so I was able to mark that one off of the list for her. So I only have her short story collection left to read, which I'm waiting for a copy from my library. And then I have my first DNF of the year, maybe, potentially, and that was the very first Alex E. Harrow book, and it was the only one that I hadn't read that has since come out. This one was The 10,000 Doors of January. I had heard very like meh things about this book, with it being, I think, her first published novel or one of her first, and I was like, well, maybe I'll enjoy it, so I went into it. And this one is about a little girl named January it's in the early 1900s, and she's being raised by this man that her dad knows. Well, her dad is off kind of as an explorer, and the man that's raising her is like a very old school, old-fashioned antiquities collector, scavenger kind of guy. And she discovers a door one day, and she can go through the door to like another world. I only made it like 40 pages into this one, and I decided that it wasn't going to be for me. As much as I really want to say that I've read all of Alex E. Harrow's books, I tried this one and it just wasn't going to work. And it was honestly because of how the characters were talking about people of other races, it just felt really weird and uncomfortable and like straight up racist at times. And part of that is because of the setting that they were in, where it was very old school, like all the white men scavenging the earth and taking all of these things that don't belong to them so that they could like trade them and make money off of them. Very like yucky. I didn't like that. I know that happened, but it was gross. And then also just the way that they talked about the characters that weren't white. They were like exotic, and it was uncomfortable. I didn't enjoy it. So I decided that I'm just not going to read that one. It's not going to take away from the rest of Alexi Harrow's books because I've read all of them and I really enjoyed them. I'm excited for her new one, but that one is just not going to be for me. So the other thing that I'm reading on my phone right now is an H.G. Perry book that is a Peter Pan kind of inspired retelling, and this one is called Heartless, I think, and it's only like 160 pages, and I read a third of it last night, so I'm just going to continue to read that one, and then I can mark that one off of my H.G. Perry list. This week I will be focusing on finishing Dating and Dismemberment. I started it yesterday at the park, and I read the first 2 chapters, so the first 40 pages, really enjoying it. I also would really love to make more progress on Aurora. And then let's go through the couple books. So I did actually get a lot of books over the weekend, but they are going to be part of my TBR for May, so I won't show you those ones, but I can show you the other ones. This one, I figured I would document my experience reading it because I'm very nervous about it. This one is called Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. I've heard about this book over the years. Jen Campbell is friends with Max Porter and she absolutely loves this book. And this one is about a man whose wife dies and he's trying to raise their kids, and then a crow shows up, and I don't know if it's like a stand-in for the concept of death or something like that, but this has a lot to do obviously with grief and loss, and it's very, very short. But I stood at the bookstore yesterday just reading the first few pages and was like, oh boy, this one's gonna be rough to read. I am very interested in reading that one. And then the other 2 books that I found, I went to the local thrift store just to have something to do because I was getting antsy, like just sitting. I suck at trying to relax, and so over the weekend I really struggle with just taking time to sit there and do nothing, and then also feeling like, well, this is the only time I have to get up and do something, so I want to go do something, but I should stay home and just relax. I ended up going out, but I stopped by the local thrift store and I picked up 2 books. So I have The Bandit Queens by Parini Schroff, which I've heard really good things about. This one came out a couple years ago, and this one is about Gita, who lost her husband. He walked out on her, but the rumor is that she murdered him, so then other women come to her to help her for her to help them murder their husbands. And then the other one that I picked up is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I've heard just very, very good things about this one over the years. This one is very much like a chill, like like friendship, I think, story. I don't know. I just feel like that would be kind of a good one to read for spring. So I picked that one up. I have just a couple books then that I'm trying to read this week. I have a list in my notebook that I'm using where I wrote down all of the books that I wanted to read for April, and I originally had, I think, 15 books written down, and a couple of them were nonfiction, and I am just completely not in a nonfiction mood right now. I marked all of them off. I am just not going to worry about them, and I'm just going to focus on the fiction books for the rest of April. For the fiction books for April then, I have 12 on my list, and of those 12, I've read 7, and we're about halfway through April. So I think I could absolutely finish a couple more. I don't know if I will necessarily finish Aurora or Pachinko by Minjin Lee because I haven't started Pachinko yet, but I'm really gonna try to read Dating and Dismemberment and Once Upon a Broken Heart, and then the other one that I have left is Murder by Cheesecake, which I need to go pick up because that is at the bookstore where I pre-ordered it. I'm really hoping that I can work my way through all of those books. And if I would stop picking up other books along the way and just focus on the ones that are on my established TBR, I would be farther along, but that's all right. My plan for today is to get some schoolwork done. When I was going through my coursework last week, I noticed on the grades section of the course page that there was an assignment due today for 25 points, but I couldn't actually see what it was. And every time that I clicked on it, there was nothing there. So I emailed the professor and I was like, what is that? And she emailed back and was like, oh my God. The module for some reason that had that assignment was like hidden from students and she had to unlock it essentially. So she emailed back and was like, I am so sorry, just get it done when you can. And I was like, okay, cool. It was actually supposed to pop up before the stuff that we did last week. Last week's was technically week 4's material, but it showed up for week 3, so that's why I did week 3. And yeah, so this one is called the Kinder Transport, and I have no idea what this section is going to be about, but there's some introductory material. It looks like maybe another article. And then the assignment is responding to testimony and primary sources. And then the final module that she posted so far is rescue and resistance in Italy. And then she posted the material for the final project. So we can start thinking about that because that's due May 13th, which is the last day of the semester or like the course. That one's 100 points and everything else has been like 10 or whatever points. So I'm nervous about this. Step 1 of the final project is to research opportunities and plan your experience. And it's really about, so there's some categories. So she has community engagement and volunteering, organizing and advocacy, creative acts of resistance, or community or family history. I ruled out community and family history because it says interview someone with a lived experience of rescue or resistance, or trace your family history related to war, activism, civic engagement, or social justice. I've done some deep diving on my family and we didn't do shit. I'm gonna rule that one out. There's creative acts of resistance, which is like potentially use creative writing. So maybe that one. But what I'm really thinking about is organizing and advocacy, because one of the things you can do is design a resource guide or toolkit based on your experience to help others get involved in a similar action. I've worked in social justice for 12 years, so I have a feeling that's going to be the one that I do. And then step 2 is reflect on your experience. So you need to either do a video presentation or write a paper. Probably going to write a paper. And you can talk to her before you decide what to do and see if like your idea will make sense. But I'm going to do, obviously all this week I have work, but I have this extra level of coursework that we didn't know about, so I need to get that done. And then the Italy module, it says it's due also by the end of this week. So we're gonna just take it as it comes and see how it goes in terms of reading and getting the content done. She hasn't said anything other than she posted the assignment for the final project, and so that we can start reviewing it. As excited as I am to learn more in this course, I'm ready for it to be over because it's been so intense. But I will take you guys along as I am getting this coursework done and also as I am reading. And the only other things I have this week going on are like, I have therapy later today and I'm getting my hair cut on Thursday, and I'm very excited about getting my hair cut because it's driving me crazy. But that's really all I've got going on. So as I do stuff throughout the week, I will update you guys and hopefully another vlog will come together. Okay, it's been a couple hours, so I wanted to give you an update. So I started going through week 3, even though it's now week 4, but everything got messed up. So I went through week 3. We had an introduction video and then a lecture video. So I watched those. And then we had a short biography of someone that we had to read through. So we're really looking at children that were rescued. And then we had a handout that was understanding trauma, which was very much like, yes, I know. I've spent many years now focused on trauma-informed care and trauma-informed responses and going through therapy for trauma responses and all kinds of stuff. So that was very like, it was a lot of information that I already knew, but I have never focused specifically on looking at trauma responses after the Holocaust or genocide. So that was the part that was new for me. Then we have to So step 1, review testimonies and primary sources. So there's some interviews with survivors. There are some documents that we have to review. There is another document, I think it might be postcards that were sent back and forth for a family that are in German, so I have to translate them. Like, I don't have to physically translate them, I just have to use a button to translate them. And then some more interviews to watch. And then step 2 is to respond in a paper. So it says, in a brief paper of 2 to 3 pages, please respond to at least 2 of the following questions. So there are some requirements. So analyze and refer to the primary sources and materials included in Canvas. This is the most important thing. So she definitely wants us to refer back to the materials. And then please format with double spacing and a regular font and a header with your name, date, and the course number. So this is all pretty standard essay writing. And then it says, okay, respond to at least 2 of the following. Like the one that says, what advantage might there be to framing the kinder transport around the story of one individual? How does this help us connect on a personal level? I have an idea for that one, but I don't know that I could get enough out of it. I mean, 2 to 3 pages double space is not long at all for responding to these questions. I think the first one, like, why do you think the most successful organized rescue efforts from international communities involved children? And I think that just kind of goes back to kind of basic understanding of age groups. And you have ones that are considered more vulnerable. And then also if you're thinking of legacies and future generations and who can contribute the most to society. Not saying I necessarily agree with that, like in terms of contributing, but I think that might have been part of it. Just my idea. What pressures and motivations drove parents to send their children to Great Britain? How did they deal with the shock of entrusting their children to strangers? How did the children process their journey and relocation? The interviews that I've watched so far from children that survived was just this overwhelming sense of loneliness that they talked about a lot. But then a sense of community with the other children if they got placed with other children. Specifically, there's one, it was a hostel, I think, that there were 30 children placed together, 15 boys and 15 girls. And their sense of community is what helped them survive. So I think it's like a sense of community. I'm probably going to focus on a couple of the ones that are about kids. So the way that I do essays is very like loosey-goosey. There are so many people that like have a very formalized process for doing essays, and I don't necessarily. What I do is I set up my paper. You know, if there has to be a header, I'll put the header. I'll like make sure if there has to be page numbers, a footer, all that kind of stuff, get that set up. And then I just kind of free think it as I'm typing. It's more important for me to get things down on paper than it is to make sure it's perfect. So what I have always done, and I did this all through college, is I will just kind of free think it and write down my responses. And if there's a section where I know that I need to, you know, add a source or something, I'll just put it in bracket in all caps. This is like add source here or find page number here, things like that. And that will be my round 2. I don't do an outline. I don't do any like formal anything like that. It's really just a get it, just like explode it down on paper, throw it up on paper, and go back after the fact and read it and see how it flows. Is there stuff that I want to move around to different sections, that kind of stuff. So that is probably what I will do for this one. But I do have a lot more resources and things to read and to watch and take notes on, and then we'll try to think back to the other weeks of rescue efforts. And what I'll do as I'm taking notes is like, if there's something that I think will be a good addition to my paper, I'll just copy and paste it right into my document. Did I move my camera? I'll just copy and paste it right into my document and then build from there. All right. So that's kind of the update for my schoolwork for right now and what I need to work on. I need to just focus on one thing and then do the next thing. I think that's what I need to do, because right now I'm trying to do too many things in my head at once, and so I'm not really doing any of it. So I need to just focus on like one thing. Okay, that's the plan. I will come back later and update you. Okay, I'm due for an update. It is Tuesday, and I did get some reading done last night and yesterday, and then I have more reading that I plan on doing today throughout the day. The tasks that I'm working on today for work are very like emotionally heavy, so I will be taking various breaks throughout the day. I just took a little break and I got up and I went and my husband and I call it turning on, turning off a candle. I lit a candle in the hallway on the bookshelf there because I don't really have like a good space in here to have an open flame. So I did on the top of the bookshelf in the hallway. Don't worry, my door's open, I can see it. But it's a bluebell candle. So it smells like a field of bluebells. It smells so good. So I have that lit. And then I picked up some books from my TBR cart that I wanted to flip through and decide if I was going to keep them or not. And I did that. And then I marked them as read on my reading app. I'm not going to count them as like actually physically read in terms of the books that I finished this month because I didn't. I just flipped through to see if I was going to keep them. And I know that will kind of throw off my numbers, but I also don't really care. So I'll show you those books. I read an entire book yesterday, a very short one. I have some other short books that I plan on working my way through. Probably won't finish both of them today. It'd be cool if I finished one of them today. And then I'll talk to you about the book that I finished last night. And I'm not doing any schoolwork today because again, I just kind of need a little bit of a break. So I'm going to take a break from that today while I'm doing this like very emotionally heavy work for my job. Later this afternoon, then my husband and I are going to go to the gym, and then I got to make dinner and we're just going to hang out. I have been trying to stay off of my phone in the evenings, and I really planned on staying off of screens entirely and just reading last night. I even brought my book downstairs and I was like, oh, I'm totally gonna read and just focus on this. And then I ended up just watching YouTube videos instead. But that's okay. It's a learning process. But let's talk through some books. Okay. The two books that I flipped through to see if I was going to keep are these ones. So this one is Becoming Baba Yaga, Trickster, Feminist, and Witch of the Woods by Chris Spisak. And this one is just a collection of, chapters because it's a book. It's not a novel though. It is about the author's experience growing up hearing Baba Yaga stories and then like explaining them and the historical pieces of the Baba Yaga story. How has it evolved? All that kinds of stuff. And I really don't want to get rid of this one. It's not one that I'm going to sit down right now and read through, but it is one that I'd like to add to my collection of like witchy type books. I have a decent collection of them going, and they are a mixture of like nonfiction, historical context in terms of witches. There's one that's about cultural context of witches all throughout the world. Some from Salem, of course. And then I have books that are witch-based but are more like mythology, like stories like this. So I want to add this to that collection. And this, I didn't realize that the author of this actually has like a full novel called The Baba Yaga Mask. So I want to look that up and see if that's something that I would like to read. And maybe my library will have a copy, but I don't know. The other one that I flipped through because I wasn't sure about this one, I am also going to keep this one. But I think what I want to do is put this on the shelf with all of our Dungeons & Dragons books because I feel like this one will be a good reference book for creating characters and monsters in Dungeons & Dragons campaigns. And this one is called God's Monsters, Vengeful Spirits, Deadly Angels, Hybrid Creatures, and Divine Hitmen of the Bible by Esther J. Hamori. Esther is a Bible scholar that teaches a course at a divinity school called Monster Heaven and goes through the Bible in terms of like historically the monsters that were in Bible stories, and then talks a lot about how we have kind of like sanitized them and made them more kid friendly. And my very limited experience with that is like, I know that the portrayal of angels that we have in like the United States is not biblically accurate at all. So if you ever see like a biblically accurate angel, it has like feathers and like a billion eyes, and I think that that's really cool. She talks about how lots of religions have a god or many gods, and then also the monsters that accompany them and like do their bidding. I just think that's so fascinating. So I definitely will continue to like flip through this one at times, but I think this is going to be a good one to keep as like a reference book on our shelf. So these two got marked as read, even though I didn't technically sit down and read them, but they are just part of those books that I think are cool to have, and not necessarily ones that I actually want to sit down and like work my way through page by page. The book that I read yesterday on my lunch break, I read Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. This one is very, very short, as you can see. It is only 114 pages. And this one is a novel about a father who is coming to terms with the fact that his wife has just died unexpectedly. They have 2 young sons, and one day a crow shows up and kind of lives with the family and takes care of them. Flipping back and forth between perspectives of like dad, crow, boys, and kind of just following their life as they're trying to come to terms with what has happened and how much it changes you, like how much a loss and grief changes you. And you can see I tabbed off a bunch of things. I know that this one has so much symbolism in it that probably went like way over my head, but I'm not gonna look any of that up. I'm just gonna keep it for how I interpreted it. I have had a lot of losses in the last like 15 years of my life. Like, I was thinking about it the other day, and it was like, okay, I had 3 friends, grandmother, grandfather, mom, father-in-law, family friend, aunt, other aunt. It's been a lot. And honestly, the one that hit me the hardest of all of them was my grandmother, because it was completely unexpected. Like, okay, let me give you some context. My grandmother was my best friend. She basically raised me, spent all of my time with her. She was amazing. And she died in very early January of 2020. And it was like perfect timing because my husband and I had just moved back to Pennsylvania. That's where we're from. We just moved back to Pennsylvania in October of 2019. And then, yeah, January of 2020, she died. And then March of 2020 is when COVID hit really hard in the United States and everything went into lockdown. But yeah, January. So she was perfectly healthy. She was in her 90s, but she was as healthy as you can be in your 90s. She had congestive heart failure, but it was maintained. Everything was fine. And then she got pneumonia and she recovered from it and everything was fine. And then it came back, and then her congestive heart failure just went off the rails and she ended up dying. And so because it went like, you know, sick, healthy, sick, dead, it like completely caught me off guard. I didn't even know it was happening. The whole thing sucked. It sucked so much, but that's the one that hit me the hardest. And I'm still dealing with that 5 years later. Like, if you've lost someone in your life, you know that it never goes away. It just, time very much makes things somewhat easier to deal with. You can have more days where you don't think about it, and so it's not as upsetting. But, you know, there will always be times where you're doing something or you think of something and you go like, oh, I should call and tell them. And then your brain has to be like, actually, you can't. And so that's like a really shitty experience. But so I had a feeling that this one was going to be a little bit difficult for me to read. And it was, but I did really enjoy it. So I underlined random things. Like, one of the first things that the dad said after he's talking about his wife dying is, I felt it would be years before the knotted string dream of other people's performances of woe for my dead wife would thin enough for me to see any black space again. So he's really talking about like grief in terms of like orbit and how it never goes away. It impacts every part of your life. And at the beginning, it is all consuming. And he talks about all the people that show up, all the people that are trying to help, and they just make it worse because they're just constant reminders. And then the people that show up and all of a sudden they say that they were a best friend of the person that died, even though they were never part of that person's life. They share all these stories with you, and it becomes a lot. There's the crow is talking at one point, and he says, The whole place was heavy mourning, every surface dead mom. And then later on it says everything was covered in a film of grief. And I just thought that was like so true, like such a relatable feeling. And then the dad later on is talking. He says, there was very little division between my imaginary and my real world. People talked about sensible workloads, recovery periods, and healthy obsessions. Many people said you need time. And yeah, at the beginning, like, people will share all kinds of stuff with you that they're coming from a good place. Like 99.9% of the time when there's a loss in a family, people that show up are doing it out of like a good place. They're not trying to like take over your grief or anything like that. They're trying to help, but nothing helps. Like nothing that anyone can say will ever make it okay. You just need to come to terms with it in your own way, through your own experiences. And it's definitely something I've experienced with the various losses. Like I had a really rough, like I'm totally just dumping on you right now. I had a really rough relationship with my mom for a very long time because she had a lot of undiagnosed, untreated mental health and substance use issues. And that meant that I had a really different experience of her living with her than extended family did. And after she died and we had a family gathering, all of these people showed up, all of these like extended family members that hadn't seen her in like 20 years. And they showed up and they just bombarded me and my sister with all of these like, oh, your mom was so great. I loved her so much. And it was like, they definitely are just trying to share their happy feelings and happy thoughts and trying to be supportive. But in that moment, that felt, that furthered the division that I felt between the rest of the family, because my experience with her and who she became was very different than theirs. And so they were coming in like a good place, trying to be like, oh, here's all these happy memories. And I was over here like, I just started therapy for this. Can y'all back off? And so that it's just like so many things in this book I really appreciated. And I know that the crow has like all kinds of symbolism with it, but I just enjoyed the crow as a character in terms of like, at one point, like when the crow first shows up, he literally picks up the dad and just like cuddles him. And it was just such like a comforting thing. Like, and then the crow at the end says like, I will leave when you're ready for me to leave. And it's just like, I don't know. I loved it so much. So I know people have very mixed feelings about this one, but this one, I really enjoyed this one. The one that I finished on my phone last night is completely different from this one. I was reading Heartless by H.G. Perry, and I actually need to find, there it is, my book journal and mark off that I finished another H.G. Perry book. This one, yeah, Heartless. This one is a shorter work. It's less than 200 pages. And it was a Peter Pan retelling. And James is the little boy. And he meets Peter Pan, well, he meets Peter when they are both working in like a sweatshop, like a workhouse for children and teenagers in, I assume, like London. And James starts telling Peter stories in order to help him sleep at night, because they talk a lot about how the dark is very scary because they're little boys and they're, you know, dealing with these horrific things as part of their survival. And so they become best friends, but Peter does not want to grow up. He doesn't want to have to continue in this very scary unknown place. And so he eventually gets whisked off to Neverland. But in this scenario, I haven't read the original Peter Pan. I haven't seen the movie in a very long time, so I don't remember really much of it. But in this story, Neverland is a place that James created in one of the stories that he tells Peter, and Peter just becomes obsessed with it. And so he ends up going off to live in Neverland and leaves James behind. And then James has to grow up on his own and deal with working in sweatshops. And then he ends up getting positions on different ships, like whaling ships and as pirates and like all kinds of stuff. So it was a really interesting take on Peter Pan, like a retelling, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty great. So I did really enjoy that one. Yeah, I liked how the author wrapped up the characters so that they ended up telling kind of the original story of Peter Pan with like Hook and the alligator or crocodile, whatever, and all of that. I thought that was really fun. So I continue to enjoy H.G. Perry's work. So that's the third H.G. Perry that I've read now, because I read The Magician's Daughter, A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians, and then Heartless. And then I have three of their other books. So A Radical Act of Free Magic is the follow-up to A Declaration. I have that one. I just haven't read it yet. I have The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep on my Kindle. Then my library, someone just returned it, so I snatched it up, had The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door. So I snatched that one up, and now I have it from my library to read. So very much enjoying the books that I'm reading. I grabbed 2 shorter works from my TBR cart to work my way through over the next couple days. So I have these 2. So we have Grendel by John Gardner, and then Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. And I have very much been wanting to read Grendel for a while now. I read Seamus Heaney's Beowulf a couple years ago. I read Tolkien's Beowulf, and I read, Maria, what is that author's name? Maria Headley? Something like that, had a Beowulf Grendel retelling that I read and is somewhere on my shelves. But this is like the other most famous Grendel story, and it's been sitting on my shelf for a couple years, and I would really like to read it. I'm just very much in the mood for like a couple short books right now and to just work my way through them. Wide Sargasso Sea is less than 200 pages, and so is Grendel. So I'm hoping that I can knock both of these out relatively quickly and then just continue to knock off books from my TBR, because I did update my thing earlier. Now that I will have these 2 knocked off as read, I think it might bump me back up to 60% because it had dropped to 59% because of how many books I've purchased recently. But I know that that's very quickly going to change, especially through May, because I have a plan for at least like 1 to 2 weeks of May that will hopefully mean that I read like 10 books because they're all going to be one type of category of books. And yeah, I think that will help raise my numbers in terms of read versus not read. But that's what I'm going to do for now. I am just going to kind of relax, go back to doing some more of this thing that I'm doing for work, and then take a break and start one of these 2 books, and then come back and do more of the work stuff. And then probably tomorrow and Thursday, I will work on my schoolwork for this week, which is writing that 2 to 3 page paper, which again, not gonna take me a long time. I just have to finish the review of all of the materials that the professor provided that can be used as like sources. So I have to do that, and then just kind of brain dump onto a Word document and get that all typed up and then edited and then submitted. So even if it's like not a huge task, it's still like an emotional task because of the course content. And so I'm trying to take it a little bit easy, because I was feeling it again that I felt last week, where it was like, I have so much I want to do, I have so much I have to do, and no ability to focus on any of it. So just trying to chill out a little bit. But it's warmer today, so I'm going to open my window soon and get some fresh air. Enough procrastinating. I got crap I gotta do. Okay, it is Friday, and I got my hair cut last night. It was one of those like zoning out on the couch, not paying attention, looked at my phone. It was 6:22, and all of a sudden I like jumped up really fast. I was like, shit, I have a haircut at 6:30, and sprinted to the car and drove. Thankfully made it on time because we don't live very far from the hair place. But yeah, finally got my hair cut. It was way overdue, thank God. Also started wearing my glasses again because I've been really struggling with a lot of dizziness by the end of the day, and there's no like identifiable medical reason for it that we've been able to figure out. So I'm going to try to wear my glasses more throughout the day, because maybe it's like an eye strain thing. I don't really know, but I figured I have glasses, I will try wearing them. Yesterday, I worked on my essay that is due, well, I'd like to turn it in today. It was technically due last week, but I've already talked about how that got all messed up. I started writing it, and then yesterday I sat on the couch after work and just info dumped from my brain. All right, so today's plan is to get this paper done and submitted. It's supposed to be 2 to 3 pages answering at least 2 of the questions. And I read my response to one of the questions to my husband yesterday because I felt like I wasn't entirely getting to what I was trying to say, but he said it made sense. And so what I need to do is, now that I have everything down on paper for the first response, I need to go through and edit it, make sure that the citations are listed, and then finish the second question response. But I'm really struggling with it because I don't have enough information. I don't have enough resources or citations to make the second question that I chose to respond to as long. I mean, if it's going to be let's say a 3-page paper, ideally it would be 1.5 pages per question. But right now it's 1 to 2.5 pages for one question and about 1 page for the second question, which obviously is not 3 pages. So I want to figure out how to condense my response to the first question and then figure out how to summarize my ideas for the second question so that they're about equal. I also want to go back and reread the questions again and see if maybe I should be responding to a different one instead of one of the ones that I chose. It feels very rambly right now. I'm not in love with any of it. But the other questions, like, I don't know how to answer the other questions and make it any more succinct than that. It sucks when they're like, oh, make it 50 pages. And then it sucks when they're like, oh, make it 1.5 pages. Because they both take a certain skill set of, if you're gonna make a long response, you need to have a lot of sources. You need to really, really know your shit to be able to not say the same thing and not lose focus for, 50 pages. But you have to do the same thing, but make it very simplified, but still get your point across in 1.5 pages. And so it's just like, I'm struggling with getting this to the point where I'm happy with it. And then I also need to go in and add all of the citations and look up. I think she doesn't say that it specifically has to have like MLA format. That is not the format that I was trained on. In psychology, it was APA. So I'm gonna have to look up the MLA format for citations and stuff, because I know it's only supposed to be 2 to 3 pages. I'm gonna try to make the bulk of the paper 2 to 3 pages and then have like a little section of sources. But I don't know. I'm just like, I'm struggling right now. But I need to get this done so I can do the next grouping of assignments. done. Yay. Okay, so you saw me put the paper together and then struggle with the citations page because, like I said, MLA format is totally new to me, but I will link a resource down below that has been amazing. I'm so happy that it still exists. It helped me out so much through undergrad and grad school. It's the Purdue OWL citation resource thingy. It was great for APA. It's great for MLA. It tells you basically how to do everything. So I will link that down below. So definitely bookmark that if you haven't used it before. But yes, paper submitted. I got it to be exactly 3 pages and then 1 additional page of citations and all of that. She didn't say that we technically had to do that for this response paper, but I know that it will have to do that for the final project. And so I thought it would be just a good introduction to learning how to do that. I probably did a lot of it wrong because I have no idea how to do citations for like random YouTube videos, and then how to okay, it was easier to come up with the citations on the works cited page than it was to do in-text citations. I specifically looked up like how do you do in-text citations, and it only gave me information for how to do the works cited page, so that was not really helpful at all. So I just guessed. So we will see how she wants us to actually do them. But that is done. And then we have all of the coursework for technically this week that I need to go through. And I know that part of that coursework is watching documentaries. So I'm going to have to like look into those and figure out how much time it's actually going to take to watch them. And then I assume there is discussion questions to respond to. So happy to be done with that paper. So first paper of the course is done. And I have a meeting in a little bit. I wanted to give you a quick reading update. I read more last night of Dating and Dismemberment. The ebook from my library finally became available, so I have it on my phone to read at night. So I am now about 100 pages in. I'm up to chapter 11. It's super fun so far. The second main character has been introduced, and of course it's like an enemies to lovers vibe. Very much enjoying this one. But all right, I'm gonna take a break for like a minute, and then I have a meeting, and then I have a bunch of work I have to get done, and eat lunch, and then review my coursework for this week and see if I want to do any of it. It's Easter this weekend and we are going to see family, so I don't know that I will have a ton of time this weekend, but I think the coursework is technically due next Tuesday, so I do have more time, but I don't want to be like cramming to get everything done. We'll figure it out. Okay, it is the end of the work day. I finished editing my vlog for this week, so I just want to wrap it up and get it posted. But for the weekend, we are just going to be hanging out and then going hiking, doing a lot of reading, and then seeing family. So I'll probably just wait and start the next vlog on Monday. But thank you so much for watching. As always, I will try to link anything that I talked about down below if you would like to learn more. I will also link that citation resource. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.